based on the area that we're taping in the arch here, definitely we have to cover the navicular. Okay, that's the whole point of creating that as your anchor, but you can also catch the base of the first to help support the arch, right? So you want to be thinking about how long is that arch base. You can do one kind of pretty long one, or you can do 2 to 3 kind of smaller ones. And sometimes working with slightly more narrow strips, but adding maybe 2 of them might be the way to go. So let's just get, there's one here I didn't like. Okay, I usually do round my edges because when socks and things go on, if they catch the corner, they'll start to roll the tape. So I tend to always just quickly roll my edge. And then the other tape that we're gonna need here is our Luco tape. So this is the first time you're seeing the Luco tape. So Luco tape is harder to tear than white tape. So everyone needs to practice this. So we're still gonna have the same technique. It's a slight pulling apart and then it's a rip, okay? But it's a much thicker tape. So it takes a little bit of practice to get that rip down. But you need to get that because we don't want to be cutting this tape. It's much more efficient if you can tear the tape, okay? So, are you okay if I use a little spray? All right, so what we're gonna do is with your foot tapes, we always wanna be, kind of have the foot high and us low, okay? So we wanna kind of be right in here. You'll see I'm gonna stand up at some point with the navicular unload where I'm gonna stay sitting the whole time with the Lodi tape, okay? So we're just gonna give the foot on top. I just wanna think about kind of capturing this ring right around his, around the arch. You wanna just kind of let it set for a quick sec. Depending on how heavy that spray was, I need to let it sit longer because the more spray that I use, the more wet it will be. And we don't want it to necessarily dry. We just want it to get a little tacky, okay? So then we're gonna just peel off our backing and be very careful that now you don't like let it fold over itself, because once that happens, like this piece is done, okay? It's not salvageable. So we want to be thinking about, okay, here's his navicular, it's sort of poking right out at me. I want to make sure I've covered that. I need to be a little bit on the lateral edge of the foot. So I want to just make sure I've got some white tape that wraps up and around the foot. And then I'm going to come here almost angling towards the malleoli. Okay, again, remember the foot is on an oblique axis. So we don't want to just wrap right around the metatarsals because that's just gonna compress the metatarsals. We just want to lift the foot, okay? So that when he puts his weight down, there's going to be a little bit of a block, some resistance to his body weight. So because his foot has some good width to it, I'm going to overlap those a little bit so that when I come up to the base of the first, I'm actually going to be able to capture, instead of his skin that I'm on, I'm going to be on the coverall as a protective layer, okay? This tape technically can go directly on the skin. There was another tape that we used to use about 10 or 12 years ago that was a heavy porous tape like this, but if it touched the skin, it would lacerate the skin as it was coming off. So they don't even make that tape anymore. So this technically can touch the skin. We just want to be extra cautious. I'd prefer not to, because we have the coverall, okay? All right, so then what we're gonna do is like a quick measure of the bottom of his foot. And what we're gonna do here is we're gonna start on the lip, okay, on that side. So that's why we wanna have a little bit of white tape that comes up and around, because if you don't come around far enough, all you're gonna do is pull on the skin really. So then I'm gonna ask him to sort of relax his foot. I'm gonna create a little bit of manual supination. I'm gonna give this a nice tug, and I'm gonna come up and around on top. And then again, just a quick measure, getting around the foot. And then if you'll pick your foot up for me, great. Now I'm gonna layer about 50% on the one that I just placed. We're gonna give him a little manual supination. I'm gonna give him a little tug, and I'm gonna lay it down towards. Okay, so you see how I've gone past the coverall here? That's okay. However, when I was laying down the white, I could have stretched it a little bit more, and I probably would have reached a little farther instead of a pure lay down. Do you see that? That's also why we want to use the stretch, because if you've misjudged the size of the foot as you come around, it takes all the surface area. You can just give it a little extra pull to try to get there. But you don't want to pull so much like I did where it completely like deforms it, okay? But again, remember I said this is okay to have a little bit on the skin, but I could have layered that like one more time to make sure that the coverall came closer to the malleoli, but we're not really gonna go on the malleoli, okay? So now, if I feel like, okay, maybe I did enough, maybe because, you know, he has kind of this wide space, maybe I want to just go and do like one more. Give it a little tug, and then I lay it down. Okay, and then we're done. There's our navicular unload. So now I've kind of covered the space between, you know, this area. We've caught the navicular. I'm pulling up on the navicular right now. So when he goes to stand and put his weight down, he's gonna feel there's a little bit of a manual block. Usually before I have them stand, right now is when I'll put the sock on, and we'll have them really carefully go all the way around this. We don't want to just frivolously put it on, because then you'll create maybe a roll. So we really try to get the sock to go up and around, and then there's still some spray around here. So now the sock will start to like adhere to the skin. It'll help keep everything in place. And then as they play, they're gonna sweat, and then things will start to loosen a little and shift a little, okay? Now, depending on the sport, if maybe he's like playing football or rugby, something that's like really heavy loading, if we needed to, we could take a little even pre-wrap and maybe a little bit of some white plastic, and we could wrap it around the foot just as an extra support to as he plays, that it doesn't loosen so much that it comes loose, okay? And so that's where you would start to determine, you know, what's the weather situation, what's his sport, how much spray did I really need, how many of these do I need, how much extra support does the foot need, okay? A lot of times though with athletes, the concept of less is more is always their MO. They don't like a ton of tape, because then they don't feel as well, especially on the hands or the feet. Like they're like, I can't feel the ground, or I can't feel inside my shoe, or now it's too thick, my shoe's tight. So we really want to be thinking about all those variables when we're dealing with our athletes. They're very finicky, but this is like the base amount that I would probably put. Depending on some of the feet in here, if you have a more petite athlete, you probably could get away with just 2 pieces, okay? And then the same concept would be with kinesio tape. As you're laying it down, the difference with kinesio tape is because there's so much stretch, you would not need that full length to come around. You would need to about half your length to accommodate for the stretch that comes around, okay? We'll grab one and I'll talk you through that, because that's really good for, like I said, our dancers, our skaters, our gymnasts, our swimmers, things like that, okay? So here's the first one you're gonna practice. Good, and then that foot.